My name's Sue Barton, and I'm Extension Specialist for Ornamental Horticulture here at the University of Delaware.
And you were instrumental in beginning the Master Gardener program in Delaware.
I was. When I was hired in 1985, my bosses at the time, Dave Woodward and Dick Fowler, sat me down and said the very first thing they wanted me to do was start a Master Gardener program in Delaware. And then we started training in 1986.
And we're here at Townsend Hall, which was the home of Master Gardeners and Extension initially.
That's right. The Newcastle County office was in the bottom floor of the building. It was very tight quarters, but it made for a very nice connection between the Master Gardeners and the Plant and Soil Sciences Department and the university as a whole.
Your first class with the Master Gardeners, you organized the training with the other university professors and you helped to launch them. What were some of their first activities?
Well, Master Gardeners did a wide variety of things. We set up clinics at various different events like the University of Delaware's Ag Day, Newark Day up on the mall, where Master Gardeners had problem-solving workshops, would have some sort of a display, but then answer people's questions. I became pregnant with my first baby in 1987, soon after the Master Gardener program was started, and the Master Gardeners, being the kind of self-starters that Master Gardeners always are, came to me and said, okay, if you're not going to be around during your maternity leave, we need to establish a structure, a more formal structure, so that we can manage ourselves, run our meetings, and the Master Gardeners just kind of took off running.
I'm Peg Baisden, and I got into this. I saw an ad in the paper which said that there would be some horticultural training. Oh, great, I would love to do that. And I really didn't notice that you were supposed to put in some volunteer hours. That sort of went right by me. But it turned out that that was fine, and the volunteer hours have been what's been the fun about this.
The training was, for me, going to school as an adult is a wonderful thing. That was the first time I went back to school, and I had a fantastic time. The information was so needed because I'd been gardening for 7 years in Delaware and could not figure out what was wrong with me, but now I know it was wrong with Delaware. You're right.
Our first projects were Ag Day and responding to phone calls.
They said they needed help at Bellevue in the vegetable gardens, and that sounded good to me.
And then I came on about 4 years later. The park would plow for us every spring, turn over the soil, and then we would rototill.
Right.
And we ended up, they weren't exactly raised beds, but they were higher than the paths. We would shovel paths to make our plots. And we started having meetings in January and February, and they were fun.
They were.
And we planned everything on paper ahead of time, what exactly we were planting.
Right, and who was going to do what?
Tell me about
He entered this contest to see who could produce the most tomatoes in so many square feet. And he set it up. He took a whole plot. He went and paid for the plot. It was separate from us. And he planted all these tomatoes. And how many tomatoes did he plant?
50, 60
Oh,
maybe?
some huge number. It was nothing but tomatoes. And then he went away. And we were left to take care of them. So I never did hear if he won anything.
I don't know, but he got over 1,000 pounds.
Right.
So what were some of your first projects, Karen? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, I do remember. The very first thing I remember is Cayman. That was a retirement home being built in Arden. And it had a fantastic overgrown piece of property there, and that had to be cleaned out, and we were the perfect bunch to do that.
We also did a lot of work with the, what was then the Clark Garden, and then the University of Delaware Botanic Gardens.
Right.
You want to tell us what your memories are?
Well, the same time I was trained, Dr. Fred was hired and came in. He needed a area where he could show the students what plants look like. So he started a annual demonstration garden. We helped plant, we helped maintain, and we helped water that garden. So we ended up having a display for UDBG friends, but all done by master gardeners. The first round, we got red ribbon, which of course is an enormous accomplishment. But they told us one of the plants is out of scale. So Peg goes, well, let's put it into scale. So whoop, she clipped some
I
leaves.
don't remember that.
Yes, oh yes. She clipped some leaves, stuck them back because we had no clue what to do with an L otherwise. And sure enough, the second judging we had blue. We enjoyed working together. I mean, it was just a great opportunity to get to know your fellow master gardeners as well.
Our enthusiastic group had gradually added more and more projects, and by 1991 we had 32 committees, each responsible for a separate project. We were ripe for reorganization. In 1991, Jo Mercer came aboard.
Hi, I'm Judy McGee. I'm here to talk about Jo Mercer. I worked with her 1997-98 on a water quality project. We'd speak to community groups about the program. We would help them by giving a workshop. Jo taught part of it. Frank Ebright and Rob Medicus taught I Hate My Lawn, and I taught about lawn weeds. She was also a computer expert. She wanted to make sure that master gardeners had computer skills, so she would teach classes herself. Jo did a lot to organize the Master Gardener organization itself. And one thing in particular I remember is the phone team, which was in existence before she came, but then it had a manual that was, this was before internet, and it was a little bit difficult to use. He initiated the overhaul of that manual. She actually started organizing everything into committees. Sort of boiled it down into several committees so that it was more concise. Jo was a very unique person and lots of fun. And she was quite an asset to the Master Gardener organization. Many of the committees and activities and the way we're organized today is a legacy of what Jo Mercer thought of and imagined and started.
I'm here with Dick Kelly and Bob Deming. We're talking to master gardeners about their training because everyone's training differed so much.
It's 99 when they revamped the scheduling and things like that, and they got into more technical things like that. And as a matter of fact, ours was the first class they charged for.
The highlight of the apprenticeship, as far as I'm concerned, was doing my telephone team apprenticeship with Sam and Helen Cupp, who were absolutely delightful, and I mean, you know them better than I did, but the way they interacted, he was obviously the superior, but she was no slouch.
Oh,
and,
yes, she
and,
held
and,
her own.
and he would say something, and he'd sort of look over at her, and she'd say, well, Sam, perhaps you wanted to say, and she gently corrected it. It was a wonderful experience. And then in here, in the Master Gardener office with Dick Fox, and he was very, very thorough and very helpful.
I'm Marion Shirky, and my class was 1992. When I trained, it was in the old Townsend, not the old Townsend, but the Townsend building in the basement, which was sort of dark and dreary and cramped. And the one thing that just boggled all of our minds, we had this one fella, and I don't know what he taught or where he came from, but he was going to teach us about how to use a fertilizer machine or whatever those things were, about where you spread fertilizer. And he took us out into this garage over that's now, it's back of Whirlow Hall now. And it was open in the front. It was cold as the devil that day. And he had us all lined up and he had this fertilizer spreader out there. And he was telling us about this thing. Well, I'm telling you, I've never heard so much detail in my life, and we all agree we're just gonna throw the stuff out there. We're not gonna do the things that he says do. This is too much.
I'm Rob Medicus, and I became a master gardener in 1994. And the way that I got introduced to the group was by taking a lot of workshops. Started with landscape design, which was terrific. And then I got to the perennials one. I think that was Peg and Karen, if I'm not mistaken. And then there was another one, and then there was another one. And finally someone came up to me and said, why don't you become a master gardener? So that's how I got into the group.
Bob can probably tell you, I think he was a couple of years after I had started. Training is a totally different ballgame now. It's light years from what it used to be.
The training for our class, 1994, we were the experimental class where they wanted to get the working people in. So they held our training up at DCH, Delaware Center for Horticulture. And then the second place, of course, was under in the pit at Townsend Hall. I was there for 2 years, I think, until '96. And that was a very, very tight situation. I seem to remember sitting in like a semicircle. Maybe that's just, I don't know. And we would pass the clipboards around and sign up for all, remember all that, Peg? Right. Sign up for all the stuff. And then the third place was an improvement. That was over at Chapel Street across from what's now BJ's, Route 72. And that was a very modern, plain building with a much larger meeting space. But it had that elevator that went at -5 miles an hour upstairs, remember that? And then this we've been here, what, 4 or 5 years now, and I really do like it here. It's nice being with the master gardeners, and I say that you can talk to these people about plants and their eyes don't glaze over, right? You know, that's important to me.
My name is John Kennel. I'm from the class of 1991, at which time we were in the basement of the university buildings, and we were given our education by the various professors. It was kind of off the cuff. It was not real scientific. It wasn't a really laid out education course. And of course it was completely and absolutely free. This is one of my high points when Morton Sheridan came to my place and photographed me with my composting for the Botanical Club, at which time I had 4 compost pits, and I gave them a tour of my yard, plus I showed them the composting and gave them a compost talk. I use tin cans like this with the top and bottom removed. You place a can on the outside edge around a cabbage or broccoli or plant, sink it in the ground a couple inches, and when you water, you fill this can, and you don't water the rest of the garden. This enables us to water our garden for 100 or 200 gallons and rather making a mess. I was fortunate in that I could teach Gail the year that they had mentors, and she was my prime student. And at that time, we were dealing with compost. I want you to notice how nice and soft that is.
I did a lot of my early hours going to the UDVG and fixing plants there for Ag Day or for the fall workshop. We used to get hours for that. And I worked on the Habitat Trail.
Meanwhile, the phone team was formalized. Don Patterson of the class of '89 created the phone manual.
I am Sam Cupp, class of '88. Our training was very interesting and informative. We had professors from the university that came on different days and covered the subjects which they taught.
I'm Jim Coral, class of '94.
Do you have anything that you remember particularly about the phone calls?
Well, I remember one lady down towards Delaware City. She had the problem, something was raking up the lawn around her shrubs. And I asked her if she'd put down grub control. She said no. I said, do you have any skunks in the area? Yes. And I said, the skunks are coming in, beating on the grubs. Get rid of the grubs, you'll get rid of the skunks.
Yeah.
She says, but I have 2 under my porch. What do I do about that? Well, she had told me earlier about a guy down the street who had trapped 5 skunks. I says, why don't you go down and talk to your neighbor and have him go down and trap those skunks? He says, he's not very friendly. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I turned him in for trapping animals without a license.
This is the manual that I've ever had since I think it was Patterson started it, and Dick Talley then kept it up and really made it a very worthwhile tool.
When we met in the downstairs area of Townsend, we learned about an awful lot of horticulture related things and met the staff of Cooperative Extension and Townsend. And then one day Sue Barton decided, okay, I give Hattie a pile of information about soil. So Cornell information about soil made me realize how important soil is to let everything begin to grow, and that's what then resulted in me choosing to participate in a class to become a master composter. We built the first compost demonstration site in Delaware at Bellevue State Park. We had the idea that people would learn about different ways of backyard composting in their own backyard.
Master gardeners began visiting schools to introduce students to horticulture and ecology. Jean, I remember you telling me some funny stories. You used to take animals out to the classrooms?
That was ag in the classroom. Yeah. We set up a pen which was not very strong. And with this, we usually had a calf, 2 sheep, 2 goats, 2 pigs. And we went through the morning session, and then we were sitting in the truck having our lunch. And one of the animals knocked the pen down. And past the truck goes 2 of the sheep. And I said to Richard, I said, the animals are out. And he was very calmly said, finish your lunch, we'll get them later. And we had a time getting the calf back into the pen because he thought it was a game. And in the meantime, in all the classrooms that were facing, the teacher had all the children there watching us.
When we dreamed up this idea of the habitat trail, this is what the ground was like. You can see that it's still an athletic field over this side of the fence. On the other side of the fence, we have our habitat trail.
Under the direction of Gary Smith and some of his students, some of us came out and converted what was that green field over to the beginning of a various kinds of plants and size of plants, from a native tree section over there to a pond that we have here, and that was where we brought the kids to teach them some things about outdoor and about nature.
I'm here today with Chad Nelson, who's a professor at the University of Delaware, but I knew him back in the 90s when he was an undergraduate and we were in the same classes together. But also Chad was a master gardener. He was in the class in 1994. And back in the 90s, we worked on this habitat trail together, and it is now the Lepidopter Trail. And I wonder, Chad, what do you remember about that?
One of the things I think is so wonderful about the Lepidopter Trail, which started the Habitat Trail, is it really does show how Master Gardeners projects in time, really evolve and can grow. And so the photographs that you have of me back as an undergraduate, putting a sign in saying this is a habitat, at the time, if you look at it now, was almost funny, because this at that point was just a few steps away from being what was known as the golf course. So it was mostly lawn and very few places with established trees. At that time, our professor, Gary Smith, had classes digging a pond, creating an overlook, and laying out a trail that was intended so that school groups could come and get a sense of what was going on here. What I think is neat is that over time, as some of these released meadows were able to grow up, maybe about 5 or a few more years ago, that really then provided a great framework for Doug Talamy, who was encouraging us to really think about ways we could promote biodiversity in suburban landscapes.
As always happens, this gradually evolved, and the Habitat Trail is no longer known as the Habitat Trail. It is now the Lepidopter Trail.
Our program has changed over time. Initially, we brought kids here and took them through the several learning stations. We were able to get a grant that permitted us to make up a variety of kits: soils, water, insects, things of that nature, which we initially intended to give to teachers to use, but later found the better approach was for our folks to become trained and use the material from these kits to take into school. Our classroom program has continued to expand to where we now give 8 to 10 classes every spring and every fall, and we have been reaching something like 25 different schools and as many as 170, 175 classes.
What do honeybees do for us? What? Make honey, right. That's pretty good to get excited about, right?
We're going to pretend that you're all the worker bees in a beehive, and you have told me that I can be your scout bee. And I'm going to go fly out and find flowers and come back and tell you where they are. So when you come back to the hive, you're going to do the, what kind of dance? Yes? The waggle. Waggle dance, right. Now, let's go. Wow, good dancing.
Workshops were given in the Fisher greenhouse.
What do you remember working on in your first plot over the years?
There have been quite a number. The first one that I did was called The Shrub for You. This was the day pre-internet, where we were still using slides and the old 35 millimeter film and whatever, and carousel projectors. And after that, the next year, the big one was I Hate My Lawn. I started that one because that was a direct response to me going out on my deck in August, I remember, and blurting it out. It looked like hell. So that's how it was generated.
And you taught that for years.
That's been going on, yeah. It's a perennial.
I've been in the Master Gardeners for about 17 years, and I've enjoyed it. Probably the highlight is when I get together with my friend Rob Medicus and we give a joint class, a 2-night class on I Hate My Lawn, and we go through everything start to finish. And the rewarding part is we take the mystery out of the problems with your lawn and teach people how to turn an ugly mess into a rather nice affair, something they're very proud of.
We are from the Cooperative Extension Teaching Garden, and the one person who is not here to be interviewed is Darlene Ledoux. In the earlier days, Master Gardeners did work at the Botanic Garden mostly garden work, maintenance work. And at some point, our Hort agent decided that was inappropriate. And Darlene came up with this idea that we could start a garden around the building. This was a whole new project for Master Gardeners.
That was probably one of the biggest surprises. They told us, yes, they thought it was a wonderful idea, but there's no money for it.
Yeah.
Well, we had invested so much time at this point that you just don't challenge a bunch of little old ladies and tell them that, you know, we're not going to give you any money for it.
Yeah.
We'll get our own money.
Darlene conceived the idea of selling garden-related things at Ag Day. We made enough money to get started on the garden.
But we only started with the front of the garden. And it really was a teaching experience once it was in for us, for Master Gardeners, too, because we realized, you know, the limitations of the absolutely dreadful soil, and also it was unevenly lighted.
Well, we started with that front side, so we continued with our Ag Day sale, and that money enabled us to go on and do the shady side, the north side of the building. In 2001, Darlene LeDuc's husband, John, died suddenly, and she had to return to Canada. This is the reason that at a later date we bought and installed a garden bench and put a plaque on it dedicating it to John and Darlene LeDuc. And then we had this south side, but we got that south end planted and labeled and stonewalled, and it looked great. And we decided it was time to celebrate it. And we just had a wonderful party. And that in the autumn of 2004. And then almost immediately afterwards, the word came down from Extension that, guess what, we were moving.
The university was selling the building and we were moving. When we found out we were to move to Wyoming Avenue, we came over to look at the site, obviously all of us very curious, including the agent, and discovered a sea of mud, a pond that was totally filled in with rocks and leaves and a mess.
And it just broke our hearts.
So there was a proper period of mourning, and then we moved to this location and finally decided that we were going to have another teaching garden, and it was going to be bigger and better.
You were leading the committee and then co-chairing it with Suzanne Barrett.
Suzanne co-chaired, and
she's been a great worker.
She's been fantastic.
She just, and the class of 2009 came along, and when we had this energized new group of people, luckily we had JW, and he has just taken this on and run with it.
Every plant in this garden, pretty much to me, has a story. There's, you know, the trees that have been planted by previous master gardeners, the bushes that have been planted by previous master gardeners. There's a 9-bark up in the corner that was planted by Julie Allen.
But here we are 5 years later after the move, and there's a marvelous garden.
I'm Clyde Roberts, and I became a master gardener in the year of 2001 class. The need at the time was we had an instructor come in and talk about pruning, and in our workshop brochure we didn't have a pruning workshop per se, and so 3 of the master gardeners, Betsy Whipple, Barbara Howes, and I got together and developed a workshop, and we came up with a title, Puzzled by Pruning, and it has been a core workshop. It's been a core workshop since then.
And another thing that you have left your mark on Master Gardeners is through the development of Expert Eye.
And it's client driven. The client said, you know, would you come out and visit with us, take a look at what we're trying to do. I have a problem with my lawn, I have a problem with the curb appeal, I have a problem with a tree, all sorts of issues that they have in their landscape, and no one's addressing that issue.
Clyde, you've been very active in the Master Gardeners for the past 10 years. What do you see Master Gardeners doing in the future?
I think if we can move our organization to become experts across the county in terms of native plants, in terms of vegetables, composting and sustainable landscapes, we'll be moving an organization way forward.
This is our Keep It Green team. This is Peg Baston, this is Gail Hermanow and Suzanne Barron and Ava Rothman-Euler.
We dreamed up this idea of workshops for homeowners, and this would be about sustainable horticulture.
My topic was healthy soils. Part of what we wanted to do with all of our topics was to show how they were connected and how each of them was a very important component to gardening. This compost demonstration site was put in 2007, and it really, there was a need for that with all the homeowners in Newcastle County now having the yard waste ban. They needed to think about new ways to manage all the materials on their property.
I just presented, based on a lot of the plants in our own teaching garden, of some of the native plants that really do well in Delaware. This has developed beyond belief, and the people from Chapel Street that originally worked in the garden still come here, and we just, every year on more of the classes, just enjoy working in it.
I had talked about water conservation. The water flows into the upper rain garden, which is connected by an underground swale, has the above ground swale that feeds here into the lower rain garden.
And I followed up with a final workshop, which was about wildlife conservation. If you have good soil, you use native plants, you have water conservation, the wildlife will come. One of the main things you want to attract with wildlife is insects. Here in our vegetable garden, the insects are particularly important, and one of the things that Gail has done is to plant native plants. You can see them here. These attract the pollinators, which like to come to native plants, and they in turn go to the vegetables and pollinate. So they're very important in the whole scheme of things. As a result of the work that we've all done here, we have this certified as a National Wildlife Federation habitat.
And you won a major award. Tell us about that.
We won first prize in the Search for Excellence in the International Master Gardener Conference in 2009.
Oh, when we were notified that we won the first place, we decided we had to go out and receive it. And we were quite famous out there as the winners of the award.
We incorporated lessons learned in this in the teaching garden and the veggie garden.
What I think is particularly nice about this site here is if you look at it as a whole and take this as your home backyard, you have a lot of sustainability in there. You have now the solar energy, you have a bit of a green roof, you have the native plantings, you have dealing with storm water management through the swales and the rain gardens. And UD Grounds has done a perfect job playing off our native plant garden to make it as to perfect it basically to something that fits all together like you would have it as your own backyard, your own property at home. In addition to what we did at Keep It Green, Gail then started the composting website and also the vegetable garden. So now added to this homeowner feeling here, we have what people request these days, which are the vegetables.
So this really distilled the Master Gardener message.
Yes.
Carrie, you joined Extension at UD in 2006?
That's right. I remember vividly my very first visit was from John Kennel. When I started in this office, the first week I was here, John Kennel came into my office and he said, "I'm so happy to have you. We're all so happy to have you. You have 1 year to prove yourself." And I thought, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? But now that I know John very well, I know where that was coming from. And as I got to know the Master Gardeners more and more, I really became energized by the group. And I certainly brought a lot of my own ideas into the program, which happened to be very compatible with what the Master Gardener group wanted to do.
Well, you were able to go to Las Vegas for the international conference and receive awards.
Yeah, we did. We received the award for Keep It Green, which was a workshop series that Master Gardeners wanted to do that picked up hot topics. And I'm not entirely sure that those topics were offered in that way before.
One of the big changes you've made, one of the real revolutions that you've achieved is putting us on a more professional basis than in the past.
I do think that we've made great strides towards getting everyone online, so to speak. And we really took a look at our website and how that could attract people to our program and how we could reach people in that way.
You've also had a huge impact on upgrading our training. You've had several training classes now, and they've been huge successes.
It's been a lot of fun. I knew a lot of people, and I knew who should be on the curriculum. And so we got some new people in, and we started tackling new topics. So those topics, like landscape design and the Keep It Green topics, the composting in the soils, and community gardens was another area that we wanted to take on. Vegetables is another area that we've added a lot of instructors and topics to our curriculum in order to provide people with the information in that area so that we can ramp up our vegetable gardening programs, which we've done. So that's where I see us going. I see us offering more and more programs in that area.
Well, I think even John Kennel would admit you've been a great fit for our program.